Good day everyone, I'm Famela Valdez. Today, I will be discussing about puppetry and mask making. So, for the background, puppetry, even though the word puppet comes from the Latin pupa meaning doll, a puppet is not a doll, nor it is limited to being doll-like. So, bakit nga ba napagko-compare ang doll sa puppet? It is because they are represent a human being, but of course, each of them has differences when it comes to their uses. A puppet is brought to life with a puppeteer. The puppeteer communicates with the audience through the puppet. So, puppeteer, it is the person behind the puppet who gives life to it by moving them and including impersonating through vocalization. So, in many different cultures, puppets were used in religious rituals. So nowadays, puppets are being used to teach religion in advertising, arts, celebration, including crime prevention program, education, entertainment, and therapy. So because of puppetry, it is used to encourage the audience what you want to convey. So, next is types of puppets. Puppets are categorized by the way they are manipulated rather than by the fabric from which they are made. So, we have 5 major types of puppets. We have rod puppets, shadow puppets, hand puppets, marionettes, and lastly, full body puppets. So, let's proceed to rod puppets. Rod puppet, one of the oldest and simplest of puppet type. The rod puppet manipulated by one or more rods. In its basic form, it is constructed without shoulder, arms, or leg. Traditionally, the puppeteer manipulates the puppets below the stage. So, rod puppets, from the word itself, rod, it is means that it is manipulated by the use of sticks. So here is the example of rod puppet. So ayan siya. So minamanipulate siya dun sa may baba ng sticks kung saan nakatusok yung sticks dun sa may kahoy. Next slide po. Shadow puppet, a flat, two-dimensional figure controlled by a wire or rod against a screen, projecting lights from behind the puppet, projecting the shadow onto a white cloth screen stretched and stapled to a wooden frame. The puppeteer moves the puppet to bring it to life. So, it is performed behind the light so that it shows that things or objects that portrays a meaning. So, this is the example of shadow puppets. So, ayan siya. Next slide po. So, next is the hand puppet, also called a glove puppet, fits over the puppeteer's hand much like a mitten or glove. The puppeteer manipulates the puppet by placing the second and third finger along with the thumb as the puppet hands. The entire puppet is moved to signify talking. So from the word itself, hand, it is performed by the use of fingers. Usually, ginagawa or pina-perform ito in front of the children to tell a story and to perform an entertainment. So, next slide po. So, this is the example of hand puppet. Next is the marionettes. Marionettes are controlled and manipulated by strings built with joint parts. The marionettes move much like a human or animals. The puppet move parts are connected connected by string to a control rod or paddle. The puppeteer stands above the puppet stage. So, next slide po. So, this is an example of marionettes, which is si Pinocchio. And dito sa marionette, nakadepende ito kung gaano kalaki yung object or character. So that, ganun din kadami yung string na kailangan for well-functioning. Next is the full-body puppets. A puppet worn over the puppeteer's head and body much like costume. Most full-body puppets are animated by one puppeteer inside the puppet. Extremely large full-body puppets may be controlled by more than one puppet or even remote control. So, for example dito is yung mascots like sila Barney, Jollibee, yon. So, this is an example of full-body puppets. Next slide po. Next, we have movable mouth puppet. Variation of the hand puppet and is constructed with hinged jaw and movable mouth. The puppeteer's head is manipulated by puppeteer's forefinger while the thumb is used to control the lower jaw. So, this is an example of movable mouth puppet. So, next slide. So, next we have the types of manipulation. First, we have below. Puppeteers operates the puppets above their heads. Next is above. The puppeteer controls the puppet from over the top of them, such as marionettes. Next is behind or beside. The puppeteer position themselves at the same height as the puppets. Next slide. So next we have the producing a puppet show. So first we have the stage. So syempre, stage is the most important in performing a show. So without stage, we cannot perform. Next is the scenery. From the word itself, scene, it is about the appearance of background that is related to the story you will show. It will be an advantage that gives more attraction to the audience. Next is props. Props is a plus points to conduct a successful performance. Basta, the props is used it effectively. Next is the technical elements. These are the lights, music, and special effects. This is important to do a rehearsal para malaman natin kung saan ba dapat nakafocus yung lights, even yung music and sound effect para alam natin yung right timing kung kailan isasalpak yung mga ganitong bagay. Next is the rehearsal. To have a successful puppet show, kailangan natin umattend sa rehearsal since practicing help a lot in performing a theatrical show, especially in a puppet show. So lastly is the performance. Since puppet show is a live show, you need to apply all the things you've practiced in the rehearsal. So you need to do well to achieve good result. Next slide po. So next we have the mask making. Mask making is a rewarding and creative process. It is an observing activity that helps focus children to do the task at hand. So, next slide. What is mask? Mask is a covering worn over all or parts of actor face to neutralize or create a new character. So, masks have been part of the theatrical for a long time. The Greek believes that when you put a mask, it is to become another person. In Japan, masks have been an important part of the traditional theater since in the 12th century. So, we have two types of masks. We have natural masks and character mass. So, neutral mass, it is plain white mass without any features. So, meaning this is a neutral mass. Ikaw mismo yung magdi-design kung anong character or design ang gusto mo. Next slide. So, next is the character mass. It is designed to represent a certain character. It can be also a ready-made mask. So, dito is, from the word itself, character. So, pwede siyang, ikaw mismo ang magdi-design or yung ready-made na siya. So, in mask making, we develop our creativity skill. It's just that in creating a mask, we have a lot of materials to be needed. So, expect that it will be expensive in designing a mask. So, yun lang po yung report ko. Thank you for listening.